So I want to just say um, a few things to start us off, and then I'd love to take some more time tonight to dialogue with you. I think the last couple of times there were many questions that I didn't have a chance to get to, and I do love responding to what you're engaged with, or what you're facing, or what you're wondering about. Um, but I want to begin tonight just saying a few things. One of the unexpected parts of this online thing is that, of course, I've been sitting with many of you every day during the week, and so I can, I think, from some of you that I've heard from, I think I can create a lot of continuity, and even for you, one, in the practice. And so that's one of the challenges so many people have, is that they want to practice, and often it's hard to kind of really have a regular formal practice. And when you do, so much can happen. That's right. This is a training. It's not just a bunch of good ideas. Hopefully it's a bunch of good ideas too, but it's really a training, and it's a practice that develops as we cultivate in our formal meditation, and also living with awareness, because that's a huge part of the cultivation. If you're just sitting daily and then the rest of the time you just completely forget about it, that is of limited value. So one of the unexpected aspects of this is that actually many of you I've been talking to daily, right? And you've been practicing daily. And that makes it a little different, even in terms of, what I can say here tonight. So if you're kind of joining for the first time, or you haven't been doing the morning sitting because you're in another time zone, or it's just doesn't work, you've got to take care of your kids from the moment you wake up, that's of course completely fine. We want you to find a way to, make the practice work for you. But I did include in my email, the last one I sent out, this little inquiry practice around the line from Hamlet, which I shared last Sunday. And that line, of course, was, I could be bounded in a nutshell and count myself a king of infinite space, were it not that I have bad dreams. And so I wrote some inquiry questions around that in the last email I sent out. And so maybe some of you have been practicing with that as a kind of inquiry. And if you haven't, you could some this week. So, but I think that is a very timely pointer for right now. And particularly because people are feeling so limited, so confined, in so many ways. And so this is an inquiry for you in terms of working with the sense of space and spaciousness. And I don't have the questions in front of me that I wrote, but some of them were things like, do you ever notice a sense of spaciousness even when you are physically limited? Because that's what that line is pointing to. He says, I could be bounded in a nutshell, tiny space, and count myself a king of infinite space. So that's just an interesting thing to be able to say. Yeah. So before he even describes the obstacle to that, so I think it is interesting to notice through the day, are there times, even when you are physically limited in what you can do and where you can go and who you can talk to in so many ways, are there moments when there is a sense of space and spaciousness? And just to notice, like, what are the conditions that are present in the body when that is happening, or even in the environment? And what are the conditions that are present when you really don't feel a sense of spaciousness? What are the inner conditions that are present when you don't feel a sense of spaciousness? So that's just something you can pay attention to notice. Is our physical freedom the only kind of freedom there is? Or can we have a relationship to space at times that's not just based in physical freedom? So hopefully I'm certain that even if you haven't been doing this as an inquiry, you've probably been noticing the incredible vacillation in your sense of like spaciousness, whether it's relationally, some moments you feel okay and you have room for people saying the wrong thing or somebody being uptight or your kids doing what kids do. And other times I'm guessing you do not have that kind of space. Right? I'm not guessing, I'm sure that this is the case, but I'm encouraging you to have an inquiry around that, to have some interest and curiosity. Oh, how what's happening with space as a dimension of experience? Right? And how does what's happening in the psyche and the conditions here affect that? Right? So open-ended inquiry, a questioning, a looking. Just having an open inquiry question like that can change the way you're relating to experience. So then I also asked about, what are the dreams that Hamlet is talking about? Of course, maybe we don't know what he was talking about. He said, I could be bounded in a nutshell and count myself a king of infinite space. That's a very stark contrast. Yeah? But that I have bad dreams. That's a paraphrase. Yeah. Were it not that I have bad dreams. Right. So what are the dreams? But not what are the dreams for him? What are the dreams for you? What are the, and I'm saying thoughts are like waking dreams. So how does what's happening in your mind, the thoughts that are present, the scenes or the narratives, the stories, affect the sense of space? So there is a relationship here that I'm encouraging you to look at. So we're not just including our life as it is and noticing the fluctuations in the sort of spaciousness of the psyche, let's just say, or space in terms of awareness, but also to include this content of what's appearing in the mind and its relationship to the space. So it's like a little more detail. And then also to notice, is the spaciousness dependent on whether the dreams are present, or does it depend on one's relationship to the dreams? Can you watch the dreams? Can there be space sometimes, a sense of space? Are the dreams happening within the space? Or is the space happening within the dream? Or both? Within the thought? Or both? So I'm not giving answers. I've been giving hints. And maybe I've been giving answers all week. But it's actually much more interesting and much more useful if this is your inquiry. And of course, not every teaching is going to land for you, so you don't have to use this. If thinking about this, if you're just thinking about it and it's driving you crazy, then you can drop it. But I think it's actually a very important topic because one, as I was saying last week, and some of what I'm going to do this week is just reiterate things I said last week and deepen on them, right? Because, it's great to hear some of this stuff, but what I want you to do is to practice with it in a deep way. Right? I want it to not just be like, oh, that was cool, I heard that, or that was interesting, and let's move on to a new topic. There's a lot of you can find new teachings everywhere, but I want you to kind of deepen into some of these things. That would be my hope. Right? So space and the lack of space is, I think, something that almost everybody is in relationship to right now. People are in relationship to it all the time, but I think it's something we are acutely aware of right now. And so those of you, I know, talking to people in New York City, or, if you live in an apartment, or you live in a small space and you're not in a place where you feel like you can go out even, much at all, or you're immune compromised, or you're in a category that's very at risk and you're really staying in. How do you have a relationship to, the space of awareness? What is this space that Hamlet had an insight into? Well, Shakespeare had insight into. Yeah. He said, there's a kind of infinite space that's here that's part of you. That space is related to you, your nature, your being, your own presence. And boy, do we lose touch with the spaciousness of being or awareness, presence, even though everything that we experience is included in it. The farthest thing you can see is included in it. The most distant sound is included in your own spacious awareness. But we haven't been taught either how to inhabit this presence that includes it all, how to even recognize that it is inclusive. As I was saying, I've been pointing to, this presence, you don't see it anywhere. Actually, you see it everywhere. It's what's allowing everything to appear, but you don't see it as an object. And so it's very easy to forget about. It's like it's easy to forget about the air you breathe until you pay attention to, like, oh, we could breathe something in. And then all of a sudden you're very aware of the air you breathe. It's really here. But it's easy to take for granted. So the spaciousness of awareness, because it is not a thing, we just have not even thought about it. We haven't recognized it. We haven't learned about its nature. And we certainly haven't recognized that it is you, that it is. This is related to me. That's, for most people, that's not something that we feel or that we kind of are in touch with in a very immediate way. So it's kind of an interesting, and it's not an irony, but it's just an interesting situation that your own being is this vast spaciousness that's in a way so obvious that everything's included in it. Everything we call experience, the road, the trees, the hills, the ocean, the city, the buildings are included in your own being, in your own awareness, right? That's how it's appearing. And yet we are only usually identified so much of the time just with our thoughts that are happening in our own mind, with our story about me and where I'm going and who I am and who I'm not and how it's going to be or how I have to. It's, again, that's all not, it's not that that's not important. It's just that it's part of the field. So maybe I'm giving too many answers now to the inquiry, but I think this will help you locate yourself and you can still engage the inquiry. So, because if I don't point to the space, you might just think about it and be confused. If I don't point it out to you that, oh, it's here, the space is here. Yeah. And it actually has this, it's not just space, it has this kind of awareness function that allows experience to appear. So again, it's not that you should feel spacious all the time. I'm not saying that you should, but it's just, that is a part of the nature of you, is that it has this inclusive quality. And our habit pattern is to be just totally identified in the thought stream. And so our dreams are not included in awareness, right? We haven't learned usually. I mean, it's amazing, our education, right? You live a whole lifetime and nobody has ever taught you how to be with your body and mind. That's just not part. Now it's beginning to be a part of education. Here we are in the, in the San Francisco Bay Area. And yes, it's beginning in the past number of years. So some of you have kids who, and I, who learn some meditation in school and stuff, but that's pretty new. Most of us never got that in school or schooling. Yeah. So how do you be with emotions? How do you be with thoughts or events in your mind? How do you be with them? Stories and narratives are not who you are. How do you be with them? Yeah. This is not part of education. It's not something we've been taught. So we've been just taught to take in information and to do activities. And we get pretty well trained at that stuff. But you can get quite far without knowing how to be with yourself, without knowing much about your nature, both on the content level in terms of how, what's even happening in here and how to be with it, but also on the level of being or awareness that's including all of it. That just hasn't been reinforced the way everything else has. So here we have to talk about that. Yeah? So there is this spaciousness, this space of awareness in which everything appears, including everything I call me and everything I usually call not me, just appearing within it. When the dreams appear, can you watch your dreams? Can you watch your thoughts? I don't mean sleeping dreams, although you can learn how to do that too, which can be interesting, but they're not necessary. But can you observe the stories that appear in your mind that shape you from moment to moment? Can you watch the scenes that appear in your mind that scare you from moment to moment or entice you from moment to moment? Sometimes, is there still spaciousness while these dreams are appearing, while these thoughts are appearing? Thinking, this is really important because we want you to keep thinking. You have the capacity to have world-changing thoughts and like really useful, brilliant insights and ideas about how to create the future and things like that. But we don't want you to be ruled by the tyranny of your habit pattern thinking, because as you know, it can be devastating and incredibly stressful to not have an alternative to the flow of whatever happens to be unfolding up here. Okay. So my encouragement to you, just in this dimension of space, one, to notice it, to notice that life is appearing, period, but also via you. Not something you can see, but something you see through. Not something you feel, but what allows you to feel. Not something you hear, but that which allows hearing to happen. It's not something you can, you can't generate a mental image of awareness or being, but it's what allows you to know this image, whatever image you generate about it. So this is almost like just very basic, but very important. So you could change, if you could change even a little bit your relationship to this kind of psychological space or psychic space, it could change your whole life after this. Yeah, so much of our kind of endlessly restless and seeking energy just comes from not being in touch with our own spaciousness, with the spaciousness and completeness of being. That's why we're always racing around trying to complete this. So just a little bit of, this can be included. This doesn't have to run everything. This can be included. Yeah, even the really big stuff, even the really scary stuff. Start to have a little bit of a more peaceful and harmonious relationship to even our big mind states and body states. Yeah, a little less reactive against it, a little less needing to, alter it all. Spaciousness and being. So just notice that this week. Notice how that is not a fixed thing, that has to do with certain aspects of what you're identified with, what thought happens to be happening, what state is here. Am I being with it, or am I just lost in it, locked in it? Yeah. And this is territory. So what is practice? Practice is like experimentation. It's not about doing it right. It's not about like being good at it. It's about just being willing to be in this territory. And when you spend time in this territory, you will learn a tremendous amount, especially if you spend time here with some interest. And so I was talking about space in that way, and that, I also was talking about psychological time relating to expectations and thoughts about time. Time like this other kind of dimension that is generated, mostly through thinking in terms of our experience of it. Right? You don't see time anywhere. We don't see the past or the future. They're thoughts and images that appear here. And our idea about how much time there is left or how long it's going to be creates a sense of the way things are. And we want to just include that. We want to include that which affects the sense of spaciousness, and that's which affects the sense of time and not enough time, too much time, that kind of thing. So please include, and bring interest and kind of a spirit of inquiry to this exploration. And this isn't just like for your own learning. I mean, there are consequences to this, right? And if you are You know, if you're around other people in this time when things are very stressful and you're not practicing with what arises in you, it's going to get hard. It's going to be harder than it needs to be. Yeah, it's hard anyway, but it's going to be really hard. And I've been talking to some of you who've just been practicing a little more during this time, and you're noticing, you know, somebody was just telling me the other day, is like, you know, you know, getting very reactive with his kids, you know, upset, and meeting it with awareness, that feeling of frustration, and being able to see more clearly what's happening and respond with a little bit more kindness and less reactivity. Those little changes are huge. You know, they're huge for your primary relationships. You know, when everybody is stressed and like under a lot of real pressure, whether it's around family members or around you individually, or just the circumstances of your life, or how do you, you know, trying to get by and keep paying your rent or making a living, all of these things, they accumulate and they add up. So it's more important than ever that we practice with this territory, so that we can not just survive this, but also be good to each other, be loving to each other. That doesn't mean not making mistakes. You're all gonna make mistakes, and you'll lose it, and you'll go past your threshold, and that's part of practicing. How do you come back in the next moment? You know, you lose your mind again and again, but then how about now? Right? That's something you get good at as you practice. You get good at it starting again, beginning again, and not just getting lost in the story of like, you know, how I should have done it differently or could have done it differently. Again, we begin again. Right? Okay. So I just want to mention one more thing, which this is maybe a little hard to describe. But a couple of weeks ago, somebody had asked a question about screens and how to stay present with the screen. And I said something about, see if you can look at the screen and also see the background at the same time. So I just want to make a point that might seem subtle, but can be significant. A lot of time we're unconsciously or subtly like extroverting with our attention. Like we're kind of like going out, getting pulled in. When you look at people on their phone, back when we took public transportation, you know, people are like in the phone, you know? So we often like unconsciously like extroverting with the attention, getting pulled out. You know, we interact with each other and we go like that, you know? So this is subtle, but actually kind of important. It can be interesting. So even like looking at a screen like right now, see the screen, see the background at the same time. In order to do that, your eyes kind of have to settle back. It's almost like something has to settle back in here and be aware of the space. And that's just a little something you can play with, this little kind of like settling back. I don't know how to say it better than that, or just like resting back. It allows all of this to keep happening, but it's because actually seeing, you don't need to go out to see. It just comes to you, it appears to you. Yeah, and a lot of times we're kind of like unconsciously going out. It actually makes it harder to be really present. Yeah? So sometimes the attention has this habit of kind of like going. So if you can let the attention just settle, we practice that with the breathing, you know, just being with the breath, not doing something to it. Those little micro moments of just connecting and letting things be allow the attention to learn how to do this, to just connect and let it be. So when you're meditating, you're practicing that micro moment by micro moment. You're not even necessarily aware that you're doing that, but that's part of what's happening. Connecting and allowing, connecting and allowing, just for moments. Yeah. It's not that it's intentional every moment. It's just sort of like happening a lot more than usual. So the attention is starting to, just from your formal practice, probably learning how to do this anyway. But it's something you can play with when anything you're doing during the day, anything you're engaged in, where you kind of feel that little bit of like forward leaning energy, or you're getting to the end of it, or you're trying to make your kids do something, or you're trying to have some outcome with them, which those of us who are parents feel all the time. Let's get to dinner, get to, brush your teeth. Let's, you're moving it along. It's just interesting to notice the energy of that kind of moving it along. And to practice letting the attention just settle back. You can still do all the same things you're doing. Yeah, you can still do all the same things you're doing, but just from a little bit of a different, like, instead of this, just this. Yeah. Again, this is not a fixed thing either. It's just, and I think I referenced in Zen, they call it, they talk about like a backward step, right? You're just like falling back in a sense into what's already here. You don't go back. It's just, this is a receptive functioning, this awarenessing that's in which everything's appearing all the time. And sometimes just the tendency of the mind or the attention to kind of extrovert that helps us lose touch with this presence in which it's all happening. It's almost like you get pulled into the relative and you lose touch with the context in which it's all happening. So again, this is something to play with. It's fine to sometimes be like very intentional, directional. Actually, you can do that from a place of presence. You could even be very aggressive and stay present in it. Aggressive in a kind of like directed way. And I don't mean in a violent way, but just like, very purposeful and be present in that. But you can also kind of just play with this settling back and including. Yeah. So I notice that a lot of the times, like often what I'm not including is the thing that's moving me. Yeah. So again, when you just notice, you kind of allow that move to happen, then you can notice, oh, I've got a huge agenda right now and it's driving. Yeah. And it's a little extra, right? That's just what's making this really unpleasant, whatever it is you're doing. So, so those are just a few pointers I wanted to give tonight. And now I would love to dialogue with you. I'm going to open the Q&A. And there's some time to write questions if you would like to. And I might, yeah. So I think I'll do most of them writing. And then if they're just reading what you've written, and then I might, at times, if I have a follow-up, I might experiment with unmuting a couple of you and just like we could dialogue with each other, because I haven't done that yet on the webinar of Zoom. So maybe we could try that. It will involve me figuring out how to find you on here. So so this is from, I'll just read this from Tony. Again, as I read the questions, the invitation is be present with yourself. Be present with the context that you're in and listen to the question too. So you're including not just the question and your own inquiry around it, but your own reactions and thoughts. We want to practice like this live, yeah, with a kind of this inclusive awareness. So this is a good time to practice too. Let's see what. Okay, I'm just going to I'm going to make somebody else the host here so that I'm going to make Pulkit the host so that he can unmute you when I say your name. We'll try that this time. Thanks, Pulkit. So I'll read this question. One way I've noticed awareness happening is that I'll be doing, feeling, thinking, or experiencing something, and then be aware that it is happening for a second or two, then return to the experience. I'm doing that because when I've tried to stay aware for a longer time, the thought or sensation disappears. And maybe my mind clears. Does this sound right? Thanks for all you're doing for us. So trying to think of how to say this. Being aware with the dreams that are happening is a bit of an art, right? It's a subtle art to be aware, especially with thinking or mind scenes, or to be aware in real time with emotions, So sometimes that's a little bit subtle. And when you're practicing and not used to practicing in this way, or it's new in whatever context you're in, often we bring a little excitement to it, like naturally, just like a little extra excitement to the seeing. And so sometimes that excitement makes the experience that was happening dissolve, because it's almost like there's not enough energy, psychic energy, to keep the feeling going. Sort of like if you're feeling really like sad about something and then someone yells to you that like you need to go do something, you kind of get pulled out of that experience, right? And then, because your attention is elsewhere, you get really, something else happens, or you get really activated. So it does take a little bit of practice to be aware with thinking without just being so aware that the thinking dissolves in a way that it's almost like it disappears or goes away. And same with emotions too. Sometimes people are like, oh, it's, you get excited. Oh, I felt this, or, oh, I'm feeling that. And it's almost like you become self-conscious, and that feeling kind of either goes away or it's hard to stay with it. So just practice in a gentle way. As you get more used to it, the mind will relax a little, and then you can have awareness with the psyche experience without it going away. It's sort of like if you're not many people practice this way because it can sometimes make movies not that interesting. But if you're ever watching TV or a movie and trying to maintain awareness while you're watching it, which can be an interesting thing to do, you might notice if you're really maintaining awareness in a very like a little bit of a effortful way, you won't take in the story much at all, and you won't have many feelings evoked by the story. It'll just be like you're watching colors and scene and kind of movements, which does not make watching a movie very fun. And that's not why we watch movies. We watch movies to have an experience. So it could be interesting, actually, if you are going to maintain awareness, to have like enough awareness going, but not too excited, so that you still are having all the reactions. There's awareness, and yet you're also aware and seeing the movie at the same time. That will take a little practice. Right? It's akin to lucid dreaming. A little bit, right? Where if you get too excited and you're in a lucid dream, it just, the dream dissolves because you wake up kind of. So you want to be practice like that. So that would be my suggestion, Tony, to practice like that, and just relax a little bit. So don't look at things maybe directly at first. Let it be like a peripheral view on something. Okay, thank you for that. So here's another question. What do you suggest as a meditation for folks who are struggling with anxiety that manifests often as anger? Each one is a side of the coin. This dynamic is making it hard for me to do sitting meditation. I walk instead and try to be mindful in most things I do. I'm not sure, but let's see if we could, if it's possible, if you'd be willing to, and you don't have to if you don't want to, but this is from Eunice M. Would you be willing to just to talk live about it, or just on the audio? And if you'd rather not, just say so, and I'll just respond to the written question.
I'm happy to get into it with you, sure.
Oh, thank you. It's nice to hear your voice. I was only hearing my voice, so thank you for speaking. Yeah, could you say a little bit more about just what you mean by the two sides of the coin of the anxiety and anger?
Well, I've done a lot of work on myself. I've been meditating for quite a while, and anxiety is something I've known since I was a young kid. So I've learned how to manage it, and so when I am not sitting, I'm not feeling the acute anxiety. When I sit and I go quiet, because I've done some body work, I can feel the anxiety. And the more in contact I become with that anxiety, my experience of meditation becomes very troubling.
Yeah.
And then I want to get out of that place
Yep.
because it's a very uncomfortable place.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a dog. I live in far away from people, so we walk a lot,
Mm-hmm.
and that's my way of meditating, just being
Yeah.
really movement. And I'm also a fitness instructor, and all my classes have been canceled because of what's going on. So I'm not getting the dose of high intensity exercise that I'm used to.
Yeah. Yeah.
So a lot of things are building up, the fear, the worry about my loved ones.
Yeah.
What will happen after this? All of this is building up.
Yeah.
Doesn't have the outlets that I normally give it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you. That's really helpful to have that kind of context. So let me say a few things, and then maybe we can dialogue a little bit more if there's a follow-up or something. But each one of us is in a unique situation, right? And we also have a unique body and mind. And so although these instructions are general, it's really good to be able to tailor them in this way. Right? So I think you said something that I really heard, which is that when you sit and get quiet, this sort of state becomes overwhelming, the kind of anxiety. There's something about sitting quietly that allows the anxiety to kind of take over and turns sitting meditation into a kind of very uncomfortable and painful experience. And also, it sounds like not that useful in a way.
Yeah.
And so I would just encourage you, and yet you've discovered things that work for you, right? You've discovered that actually walking, something about moving the body, allows your nervous system to kind of integrate or balance and to settle, and you can be aware then. Right?
Absolutely.
So depending, and this is important for all of you to know, I don't say this to everybody who has trouble, who doesn't like the sitting. Some people say like, oh, I'm used to exercising all the time and sitting is just really like agitating. I usually tell them to sit longer. Yeah. But there's something in the quality of what you're describing where I actually think not only are we a body-mind system, we're also like an energetic system.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's something I think that you're doing with the moving and the walking that is actually for your particular nervous system actually very healthy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you know that already. You said that. And so, and that it's actually when you there is a yogic element to meditation. So there's something about balancing the nervous system like that. And then I would encourage you in your walking to include all of these domains that we've been practicing with in the sitting meditation, including watching the mind, being present with your feelings and emotions. And yet you're using the walking and maybe seeing as the kind of, or hearing as the kind of anchor for your attention.
Yeah.
So I think for you, that's a really useful thing. And I would encourage you not to push it on the sitting, especially in a stressful time.
Yeah.
Because we want to actually do what's supportive for awareness. And that's different than just like working out until you're exhausted as much as you can and then feeling okay, like a little relief from the anxiety. You're actually practicing awareness, but you're working with your nervous system in a way. So I think these long walks you're taking sound very skillful. I would just locate that in the domain of like working with the nervous system or the energy system. And then I would just encourage you to include all of the formal instructions in that process too. Yeah. And then maybe at some point the sitting will feel a little different, or there'll be a way of sitting where you've built up so much momentum in the walking. You can also do walking meditation where you walk back and forth. You've built up so much momentum that the sitting will feel more easeful.
Thank you. That was helpful because I've been feeling terribly guilty about not being able to sit and do my 40 to 50 minutes a day. And a couple of days ago, I had a chat with my teacher, James Baraz, and I was not very honest with him that I have been having a hard time just sitting and meditating, I just said I'm taking care of myself to the best that I could.
So this is important. I don't want you to think that taking care of yourself like this is you not doing something. It's not really, you're actually making a skillful adaptation and do it in the service of practicing, not as like, oh, I'll practice later, I'm just taking care of myself. You're actually being skillful. Yeah. So the guilt, not necessary. You know, a lot of the Thai monks, they will walk all night. They do, you know, walking meditation, you can get as concentrated doing walking meditation as you can sitting, and you can have all the same degree of insight and understanding walking.
Yeah.
You know, now often in the meditation world, we kind of encourage people to just like walk back and forth in a limited space. You know, that's like one phase, because it can sort of help you not be in your usual stuff about going somewhere. But I actually think as long as you have the right attitude, you can just walk and include like that. So I don't want the rest of you to think that you get a pass from sitting, because actually sitting is very useful also. But we need to tailor the practice and tailor the practice so that it works for your nervous system. Yeah. And so when sitting's not the thing, it's not the thing. And for some of you, you have other things that are not the thing. So thank you, Eunice. I really appreciate the question. And I want you to really feel like you're fully practicing and fully practice with these in this way that you've adapted, because I think it's very interesting.
I am very grateful.
Okay, thank you. Here's a question. This may be too abstract or not relevant to others. I'm having a doubt or maybe a quandary. How could it possibly be that 2,600 years ago, the Buddha discovered a way to become liberated and taught this because he felt it's possible for all of us? And then this unbelievable, remarkable realization was not spontaneously or even over time discovered in other parts of the world. That's interesting. Let's see. I don't know the answer to that. And I don't know that it wasn't spontaneously discovered. You know, everybody languages things in their own way, you know, and the Buddha languaged things certain ways. But I will say, when I read in some other traditions, even traditions that are not Buddhist, I hear some of the same, really some of the same insights and some of the same realization, but just languaged quite differently. So that's my opinion. This isn't a, you know, I don't have footnotes on that. That's my opinion. But, you know, if just one example is if you read like Advaita, you know, kind of like non-dual Advaita Vedanta teachers, you know, if you read, or you read some of the old texts like that, even though the language is the opposite, they talk about self instead of no self. On an essence level, it's hard to feel that they're not talking about the same thing. Even within Buddhist schools, the languaging is so different, you know, and the arguments are rife between the different schools about like what they're even talking about, or, you know, which understanding is deeper. But I would just say my opinion is that I don't think that was the only place that those insights were ever revealed. I think they can be revealed spontaneously, because my sense is the Buddha's insight was an insight into the nature of our own minds and the nature of our own experience. And he happened to have that insight, and maybe have, and not only that, but have some kind of capacity, and also probably a lot of very useful conditions that allowed his teaching to propagate in a certain way. Right? I'm sure there are many people who've had similar realizations, and just like they didn't have the conditions for it to go anywhere, like didn't leave the neighborhood, you know, or they weren't able to talk about it in a way that others can understand. So my sense is, even just from, you know, if you, this Eckhart Tolle, or just people who have awakenings out of almost nothing, you know, out of suffering, or out of, you know, Byron Katie's another example of this. You know, I don't know them, you know, but if you just hear about them, it's sort of like, oh, you know, people can wake up even without a background. And they don't always formulate it the same way. Their understanding, just like religions, I think, are like this. They get formulated through a cultural context and stuff. But I do think that the Buddha's insight and the way that his teaching formulated, maybe he was just a great teacher, or maybe, the people who came after made it all make sense in some ways. I do think it's a very effective languaging and very practical also. But I would not think that it was at all unique in that way. So thank you. I think that's interesting. There was a question on here a moment ago about video, and yeah, the video is not, the way the webinar works is you can't see everybody's video. So we're trying to figure out, just to say, a balance of, as we learn about the technology, having as much community feeling as we can, but also protecting the community from some of these things we're not exactly sure how to stop, and platforms like Zoom aren't, especially if you have a very big meeting. Things like Zoom bombing and people taking it over with their video and audio because they don't really have settings to limit that yet. So please just know that we're thinking about these things. I really care about the community side of it, and I also feel kind of a real responsibility in protecting the community from some of the real ugliness that can intrude like that. Usually we have kind of barriers to entry, in the sense that, like, it takes a lot to get yourself to a group. And if you were going to get up and start shouting in the middle of a meditation group, you're really committed to that, and you're willing to, like, have some consequences, at least interpersonally. So this is a really different world, and we're just still learning about it. So I actually really like it when I can see you in the meeting. So we're figuring it out. Here's one. While meditating, I find that when I watch my thoughts, like when they become strong enough to come to the forefront, or try to be aware of them while also focusing on my breathing, the thoughts disappear. It feels binary. Like I can be aware of my breath or my thoughts, but it's difficult to hold both. How do you approach this? It's just like anything. You just keep playing in the territory. It's really hard to do two things at once. For most things, right? It's hard to, dribble the basketball and run up the court and look around and actually see what other people are doing. That's like actually kind of complicated. And so it does take practice to be able to, like, just to be able to, awareness actually is including everything all at once. You don't have to say, like, I'm going to include that chair, and I'm going to include that lamp, and I'll include the bookshelf, and I'll include those people. No, it's just inclusive, and so we're kind of used to being caught in one, kind of like, it's almost like, once we become involved, actually you do this fine passively all the time. When you're not thinking about it, you're passively taking in all the senses, you're integrating them, you're creating a coherent picture of the world stable enough, and you're interfacing with it. And so it just takes a little practice to be able to be lucidly aware and to not get too involved. Like, I'm aware of that, but now I'm not aware of that. Because actually, the panoramicness is a little bit lost when you kind of go to one thing. So as you relax a little in it and you just get used to it, it just starts to be more like, oh, the seeing's happening. And, just like you can watch TV and be aware of people talking in the background, or you can just be totally absorbed in what you're seeing and not be aware of people at all. So this may seem more subtle, and it is, but I would just say keep practicing with it, because it's very possible. And you might notice it in your next meditation. Might happen very soon. Okay, here's another one. My sense of space, this is from Douglas. My sense of space is significantly influenced by the abundance of humans. in my immediate proximity as I go through my day, and in my persistent thoughts that the planet is severely overcrowded by humans. My dreams include a decreasing human population approaching a sustainable population. So I'm going to just summarize it a little bit, but just saying that when you go into like nature and there are fewer humans, that's more pleasurable and there's a sense of spaciousness and stuff. Yeah. Perhaps you can find a question in this. I think it's an interesting comment. Now, mostly I'm interested in your reaction to how you framed the future, how you framed the future inquiry. Okay, so this is, so I'll just say something that's actually, I think, important for us to see. When you think there are too many humans, and I'm not saying there aren't a lot of humans or that it's not true that that has impacts on the planet and all these things. There are a lot of truth to that in a relative way. So this is going to be, I'm encouraging you to hear this without thinking I'm negating any of that. In a moment when you think there are too many humans, notice what impact that has on your consciousness. And I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying notice that. That's not just a given. That's a thought you have periodically. You're not having that thought all the time. When you're not having that thought, what is your experience like with the humans? When you are having that thought, what is your experience like with the humans? That's just really important to see in terms of a cause and effect in the present moment situation. This is not just about what you're encountering. It's true about so many things. As soon as you think of something, you experience that. When you think of a problem, you experience that problem. When you're not thinking of that problem, where is that problem? Again, it's not to say that the thing isn't something that's important, but that's really important to experience moment to moment so that you can have some agency in relation to your own psyche. Because if you think that's just a truth, somebody in a group just recently said to me, the world is on fire. And I said, I know what you mean when you say that. But I also want to point out that that is a thought. Right? It's a thought where you're taking a piece of what's happening right now and you're creating a narrative that the world is on fire. Now, the world is not on fire. There are a lot of difficult things happening in the world. And there's one particular one right now that is uniting us all in a really serious way. It's a big deal. It's not little. But those kinds of thoughts are really, they're sort of like, they're very general and they have incredible shaping power because as soon as you think that, you just experience that the world's on fire. And the person said it, and we all do this all the time, so it wasn't unique. We just say it like as if it's just, it's just true. Well, the world's on fire, so ... There are too many humans, so I really want you to notice moment to moment, what happens when you think that? How does it shape your experience of humans? What happens when you don't think that? How is your experience of humans? Yeah. So we want to understand how thinking is a useful device. It allows us to communicate, to have a concept like the world's on fire. I get what that's pointing to. But if we don't pay enough attention, we start taking that as like the sum total of the truth, we are missing a lot. Yeah. We're missing a lot in so many ways because like that thing about the world's on fire now, well, how about like 4 months ago, was it? There was a lot of suffering happening in the world. There are wars happening all over the place and, people, all kinds of incredible tragedies and sufferings. And so, we want to be able to include really the fullness of what's happening in this world without believing our oversimplified narratives about it, and also see how we're creating psychological reality moment to moment. So I think it's very interesting to see that sense of spaciousness. Are the humans included in your awareness or not? In that sense, are they separate from you or not? And I get it. You're around a lot of people and it's easy to just be like, oh, it's crowded. Maybe many of you are in a home, like, as I am, with many, everybody's in here, you're with your family, and everybody's stuck there together. Your teenagers, your little younger kids, you're all there together. Feel like a lot, crowded. Maybe you're there with your parents, and it's whatever. You have some constellation. So this is where we really need to include. Are these humans included in the space of awareness, or are they crowding the space of awareness? Nothing can crowd the space of awareness. It includes all the bodies in your body. In that sense, it's not separate. So I'm just saying a few things now, but I think it's very important, actually, because it's also fine to have your own temperament. We all have different personalities. Some people love crowds, they're extroverts. Some of us, that's not our preferred place of hanging out. You introvert, or you like to, fine. But let's not just like default like that. We want to really include, okay, check the narratives in the mind about there are too many humans. How do you relate to humans? So what if there are too many or too little? You can fantasize about there being less or more, right? But these are the humans we're living with. We want to love each other while we're here. We want to be good to each other, and to see the humanity in each other, yeah, and to also feel our connectedness, right? So I just encourage you, that space of awareness is what includes everything. So in that sense, there's so much connectedness here. So that's just a little bit around that. Okay, I'm going to do another one, which I might unmute. Let's see. Sometimes when I'm in my normal day, not meditating, I'm practicing awareness and watching life unfold in front of me. And it can sometimes be absolutely exquisite and full of so much joy. I mean, oh my God, look at all this unfolding just for me. It's breathtaking. And then in an instant, it can turn to complete panic, the realization that it's only me. Where do we find the bridge to feel that kind of gorgeous awareness and also experience connection to others at the same time? Well, I would just say, again, this is one that is better not to answer. It's better one that's to ask. Is it only you? At any point, we can make a conclusion. It can seem a certain way, we can make a conclusion, and then we experience that. That's the power of thinking. It's only me. That's a really big thought. And I imagine that's a big thing to feel. It's only me. And so, there's a layer there, which is thinking is creating. It's a layer of I'm watching this, and then it's only me. And that's actually a little constructed, even though it's understandable. So I just encourage you to see the it's only me, and just include that in the field of awareness. And notice if this idea that there needs to be a bridge, in a sense, if awareness is including everything happening outside of you and everything that's happening inside of you, where is a bridge to or from? Okay. I notice a lot of doubt arising for me in recent days. Self-doubt around processing feelings, seeing the world the way it is, things I'm prioritizing in life, etc. And also doubt, skepticism of things showing up externally, news, media, of course, and even Dharma teachings. Maybe this is a symptom of anxiety. Can you speak to how the practice can help to address doubt? I can. Would you be up for just talking, Karen? Would you be up for just dialoguing about this a little, so we can flesh it out? I think it's a good topic. I think it's important, but we also don't have to. It's really up to you.
Hi, Will. Can you hear me?
Yeah, yeah. Do you want to say a little bit, just about how that's showing up? Or I get that there's a doubt about the news, but also doubt about um, Dharma teachings and stuff like that. Or yeah.
Yeah, so this feeling of doubt is not a net new thing, but
Mhm.
especially during these times when I'm socially distanced,
Yeah.
disconnected, it it is taking a much bigger voice. And it is the voice of like, okay, meditation is helping me in the moment, but I have a glimpse of there is inner peace, but I can't hold on to it. So is it even real?
Hmm.
Uh, yeah. So doubting is essentially everything that is coming up.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think it's interesting your description of that. You can feel some peace, and then you question, is it real?
Yeah.
You know?
Because like life as we knew a few weeks ago, was that real or is this the new real?
Right. Yeah. Well, I think so a couple of things you're describing, I'm glad we're talking like this, because doesn't sound like it's just about doubt as a mind state. What you're describing is the collapse of the sort of structures that help you orient, you know? Like, how do you know how do usually we orient around our sense of the way things are. And when we're in a time of really rapid change, and that could be like right now on a societal level where like things were so different just a few weeks ago, for everybody, or just a time of personal change, because that can happen within your life, even when everybody else seems to be going on normally, where, some big thing changes inside of you or outside of you, or you have a loss or some big rupture in your life, and you sort of don't have your location posts.
Mm.
And so I just want to say, I think a lot of people are experiencing that right now, and it's very hard to know how to orient. Yeah, that's hard. And so the mind races for new ways to orient, yeah, for new structures, and that's very unsettling. Mm. So I think it's good to acknowledge that and to see that. And part of what we're practicing with is actually, can you is is there something here that's not just a thought structure about the way things are, or an outer structure, right? When the outer world is changing rapidly and the inner world is changing rapidly, that's the hardest for us. So so is there something here that's aware of it happening? That would be, whether you feel a moment of peace in meditation, I get why you'd question, is that real? That was a moment of peace. So what, right? You might think, so what? But I think a more useful question is like, okay, is there something that can be aware of this change, or that can be aware even of this searching for a new way, or even aware of this state of doubt, of questioning? What's real? What's not real? Right? So I would really encourage you, and I know you've practiced for a bit, so I think you have the background for this. This is the time when we can either go searching for another structure, yeah, or you can practice being with the flow of experience and witnessing it in awareness. Yeah. I mean, you can do both really, but I would encourage you to include the doubt. Yeah. So one of the functions, though, probably know this, of doubt, or in the teachings, the reason they call it a hindrance is because they call it skeptical doubt. Skeptical doubt is that kind of like questioning whether the practice is useful. The reason they consider it a hindrance is that it constantly takes you out of staying present with experience. So it's not that of course, we want you to have a questioning attitude. Inquiry is all about questioning. But um, uh, but if doubt as a pattern can just like keep popping you out into just thinking about stuff. So I would really encourage you to just stay with this unfolding and keep including it, even when it's disorienting. Disoriented is a state, you want to include it. How does that sound to you? Is there another layer that comes up as I say those things?
No, that makes sense to me. I will work with that well. Really appreciate this and always look forward to sitting with you. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, just I think it's very normal to feel that, and even your meditation practice may feel very like not like maybe it doesn't feel like robust enough. And that's okay too, right? Because in a way, nothing's going to replace that sense of stability when it comes from, from the concepts, right? Or from the actual stability that you had in your life, maybe your job or your work or just the course of your ordinary life. Nothing, the meditation is not going to replace that as a substantial enough structure, but awareness is what's including all of it. So I'm just encouraging you to take refuge in that, in the noticing, because that's the kind of stability, actually, that's a kind of a ground that is here all the time. I mean, that's something the Buddha's teaching about and pointing to. It's like, what is the unconditioned in the midst of all this conditioned phenomena, thinking, feeling, sensing, the conditioned world happening? What is unconditioned within the conditioned? What is it that's not moving within all the movement? What is it that's here all the time, even if it's not phenomenal in the sense that it doesn't have shape or texture or color? What is that that's here? That's the refuge that's kind of like a ultimate side teaching. And that's, in a way, when things get really hard, what we want to begin to notice. Yeah, what is it that's here all the time? Because that's where we're practicing with that territory of really of life and death, of birth and death, and going beyond the usual, just coping. So, okay, there's so many more great questions. I see them all here, or I see a lot of them, and I just want to encourage you all. So, in the last couple of minutes that we have here, continue to practice. If it's helpful to do the morning practice together, you're really welcome to sit like that. But continue to orient within being awareness. When you orient like this, you have more of a sense of agency in relation to what's arising. There's a little bit more spaciousness that's even possible. It doesn't mean you always feel it. So keep up that inquiry around space and around psychological time. Yeah. And keep loving each other. Yeah. Keep being good to each other. Right. And we can keep, and that can include yourself. Yeah, because you're just a sensitive human being, and these are really hard times. So you're practicing under very challenging conditions. And it is a time when I think you can make a lot more progress in your practicing because the conditions are challenging. But it's really important to be gentle, to emphasize kindness and care, and don't forget awareness. Or if you forget, you can always remember and notice what is here, what has never left you, what's been here the whole time, even the whole time you forgot about it. So we'll just sit for a moment before we formally close. Again, if you want to donate to Tipping Point through, all the donations are gonna that come through Sunday Sangha are going to go to Tipping Point for this next week, and we're going to pool those donations from last week and this week. So may each of us, in our own way, continue to look deeply into the nature of things. And may we be willing to see things as they are. And may this clear seeing, this clear knowing, free us. And may this be for the benefit of all beings, everywhere. So thank you all, and uh, take care, stay safe, stay awake, and see you soon.